Do you love interior design but can't make the business side work? You've come to the right place. Welcome to Success by Design, mastering the business of interior design. Whether you want to elevate in your current interior design firm, start your own firm, or move the needle when it comes to your existing firm's trajectory, this is your masterclass, and I'm your host, Katie Erickson. Learn from my mistakes as I built a coast-to-coast, multi-million-dollar interior design firm. I share nearly 20 years of serving as a university professor of undergraduate and graduate business courses with you. And best of all, I bring in experts in all things business and interior design. Class starts now. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode. It is one of my favorites every single year because it is color of the year and we bring the best and the brightest. In fact, back in the green room, we were talking about it, and it was sweet because Ruth Ann with PPG is like, do you realize there's over 75 years of knowledge of color on this call? And I'm like, that's amazing to think about. So I'm so excited to bring it to you today. We've got PPG in the room, Sherwin-Williams in the room, Benny Moore in the room. It's going to be a great conversation, and I'm really excited to share it with you. So without further ado, let's go straight into it. Color of the year, Ruth Ann with PPG, kick us off. Where did PPG land for 2025 and why?
Well, we're very excited about this year. So for 2025, it is Purple Basil, which is a very deep aubergine, and it was chosen for a variety of reasons. But one of the biggest is it's the perfect balance of an energetic red and a calming blue, bringing those together, and we're all looking for some balance in our lives. So we thought it was a really good choice.
You can say that one more time, Ruth Ann. Yes, we are all looking for some balance in our lives. Oh my gosh, it's so true. You know what's funny is when I was looking at the color, you had hinted at this on last year's episode.
Did you pick that up?
And you were like, I'm liking myself some purples and some. And I was like, wait, what? What? Like, come again? And here we sit, color of the year, which is why I love doing these. And Andrea is joining us with Benjamin Moore. Andrea, you're not that far off from Ruth Ann's color of the year.
No, we are, in that violet kind of zone. Yeah. But what's interesting about our color of the year, which is cinnamon slate, is that it's an interesting one because it tells this undertone story, which is something we really wanted to lead into for 2025. And it's this gorgeous balance between almost like a heathered brown, velvety plum. It's a really interesting color that's going to shift somewhat depending upon the light that you're in. And we were also looking at, having that stability, having that balance, being able to have a color that makes a statement, but there's something very comforting and approachable about it. We see people looking for that sophistication, personalization in their home, and cinnamon slate just really seemed to check all the boxes for us.
It's interesting looking at all of these colors because I saw so many of them at market, and it is these rich, sophisticated, and I love that you brought up undertones because it is all about those undertones. Like, it is not primary. It isn't secondary. It's like tertiary. Do we get to quadrutiary? Can we create terms? Like, there's so many undertones and layers to these because they're all so sophisticated. And Sue, coming to you full circle, this year isn't just about a color of the year. You've blown the lid off of a color, and now you guys are putting out something much more bold, no pun intended, right?
So it's our 15th year in the color of the year world. So we wanted to do something a little different. We'd always gotten feedback that one color is great, but it was not enough. So we launched Capsule of the Year. So we launched actually 9 colors. And the thinking was they're all trend forward, right? They all tell the story. They coordinate really well together. So a designer could probably potentially use it as a full palette, or a homeowner certainly could take the guidance. But it's got the best of what we saw coming forth in 2025. And it was a big change for us. We took a risk on it. Yeah. It was a big change, but people seem to really like it. So far, so good. What I can tell you about the colors that are important, focused on solid warmth. So lots of beautiful, clean whites, right? With a soft undertone, not too chilly. Very warm brown. So like really leaning into, like you guys have both commented, right? In this like earthy space, but like a, modern with a twist, right? Taking brown to the next level. There's a purple in there, and I am personally not a purple person, but it's growing on me because it's really complex, right? It's the combination of all these factors. So blue and brown and undertone and red and things together. So the complexity of the color, it's like kind of the right time to tell that complexity story. And then we pulled in a chartreuse for a little pop and a deep blue. Blues are not going away. And I was kind of tired of telling a green story for a minute. So yeah, it was a big change for us, but I'm excited. It's probably something we're going to continue. Crazy.
It's been well received. Well, and I think too, that's neat because it gives you the option of doing an entire home potentially, or picking 2 or 3 that work really well together. If you're the designer that's like, I love color, but I'm not feeling that brave or that confident, it's been prefabbed for you, which is a really incredible thing as well.
Yep. Designers love that, right? They love a Garanimals concept if it's like really well done. And so why not serve that up? You know what I mean?
Yeah, 120%. I'm there for it. Surprises this year. I mean, you're in color day in, day out. What was the surprise in putting together a 2025 color of the year that maybe you didn't see coming? Or you're like, no, we've been flirting with purple so long that it was going to emerge. We saw it coming and it's finally had its breakthrough year.
I would say we've been kind of tracking the violets for a number of years, and I'm in the same camp as Sue. It's funny, I'm not much of a violet person, but what we've seen since, I'd say, Color Trends 2023, each year we've had a color included that has some violet to it. And it's been very, very well received, and it's definitely gained some momentum. And I think even looking from last year, we had Hazy Lilac, and that got a lot of attention. That was almost like a surprise, I think, for us that people really loved those images on social and whatnot. And then for this year, we shifted it to a little bit of a warmer hue. So you can really see when you have images next to each other, you can see where that shift happened. So I think it's something that's been building. And it sounds like Ruth Ann was alluding to violets last year too. So there's something in the air there.
Ruth Ann loves herself some purple. And so are you in your happy place, Ruth Ann?
Yes, very much so. So as you know, our forecast comes from architectural, automotive, aerospace, and OEM. And architectural has wanted a purple in there for a while, but it wasn't the right time for automotive and aerospace and OEM. But this year, all the stars and moons lined up, and that was a subtle nod to just the celestial piece of it that inspired the purple as well. So it wasn't a big surprise. I think probably the biggest surprise we're seeing is just how much color is back in general. Like people are craving color, which is really nice. So because we picked this in January, so it was already started to happen then, but it seems in the past 2 or 3 months, all of my accounts are, hey, we want color. We want bolder color. So that's been a really nice surprise.
I totally agree with you after 08 and all the grays. I still feel like we have a hangover from 08 and that there's so much gray out there. And the fact that it's warming up, though, I feel like everything you all are saying, everything is warming up, which is so nice to see. We're not headed back to graham cracker brown, but these are really rich and sophisticated colors.
Or are we?
Are we, Ruth Ann?
Or are we?
Or are we going back to graham cracker? Oh, please tell me it's a sophisticated brown. I just can't do more. Really? This is when you know you're getting older, when you're like, this is the 3rd time.
It's richer.
Yes.
It has more depth. It's more nuanced. How about that?
Yes. Exactly. The nuance. But Sue already aged us because she said Garanimals, and we all laughed because we knew exactly what she was talking about. So we've already aged ourselves. We were talking about that on a meeting this morning. I've been getting 1 or 2 calls a day from customers saying, hey, we need, I'm going to say the B word, but they want beige. To your point, it's that we've had enough of the grays and the sterile. That lasted a long time.
It did.
So yeah, you might be seeing some graham cracker brown headed your way. Maybe that's our color of the year for next year.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about those camel tones is they balance gray. So like if you want to like educate people about how to like take gray and like kind of cycle it out and build something new, you pair it with camel, right? That's a natural coordinate. So it's a great combination and it's a very nice story. We don't want to tell people like chuck all your gray cabinets and all the things that you've done. It's about finding the balance in between. And that's why this like warmer, natural elements all fuse together. Gray's never going to really truly go out of style. It's just the amount, the ratio is what's changing.
So how do we implement, because when you first look at these purples or even some of the colors in the curated palette, Sue, that you were referencing, they're bold and unapologetic. And that can be intimidating, especially when you're a designer. Like, where do we start? What do we do with that? What is the on-ramp for designers with their clients when it comes to having these conversations? Because you're right, I do think there's a desire, but there's this fear factor because we all remember the avocado green of the 70s, right? But just being at High Point, there are some gorgeous greens right now that are amazing. In fact, I'd go so far as to say green is the new blue.
I would agree with that.
It is just gorgeous. And we're seeing these apricot tones come in with those greens. That's just breathtaking. What would you say to the designers, though, that are like, what is the on-ramp for these bold, big colors that we're starting to see, especially because we've all been in this like gray drought for the last 15, 20 years? What do we do with that?
We've been really trying to get people into using color, even if it's a small way. I would say, really, I think after COVID, I think people were stuck at home and they were looking at their gray, white rooms and they were just hungry for color. And so I would say over the past couple of years, we've been really sort of telling that story of being brave. And one of the things that we always urge people to do is if your client isn't so sure about it, but you're dying to bring something in, choose a space that's a little bit smaller, even if it's a powder room. Maybe it's something that doesn't feel as on display, if you will, that they can bring color in and they can experiment. And what we've found is even if somebody has, say, it's a guest room where that's almost their experimental space and they're like, maybe I'll do a deep color and I can close the door. And if I don't like it, it's fine. But what happens is that becomes almost their favorite space. They're like, oh, I love that room. And then that builds their confidence to be able to bring bolder color into other parts of the home.
I love that. What would you add to that, Sue?
Yeah, I would definitely say this is a little like kind of the trend world, but this is what we're living in right now is a little bit of the age of reenchantment. So what that means is like exploration of immersive interiors, both in the commercial and residential space. So people want to feel something in chaos, right? Because it's certainly chaotic out there. People want to feel an emotion, and that's tied to neuroaesthetics and like that whole realm of like how color is transcendent in a space, but it speaks to this emotional connection. Andrea's totally right. Creating a place that you can go and feel a little sanctuary, whether it's bright and bold and energetic or soft and moody and cave-like, like that's an emotional response, and that's fused by color, no matter what that color is. And people are willing to take that chance now for the first time in a very long time. So whether we're talking dopamine brights or cave-like nurturing hues, there's an energy around trying it out, and designers need to show that to their clients. You see it in show houses all the time. That's why you have that like visceral reaction when you walk through a show house, because it's engaged color. And maybe it's over the top, but it's beautiful. And so I would just encourage designers to like kick off the safety colors and try a little risk taking. And I think they will have great results.
Let me ask Ruth that, because I think that's a great point, Sue. How do you have that conversation with the client as a designer where you challenge them as a subject matter expert and position yourself as the designer, as a subject matter expert, and really inspire them to try something that, their idea of a really big day is going to creamy instead of a pure white,
Right.
And we're all laughing because we all have had those clients. And, and then you're like, oh, you should come meet the cinnamon slate over here and take that for a test drive. And they're just looking at you like, yeah, no, that's a little too much. How do we get them there? How do we have that conversation where we're like, no, we see your home, and we have a vision for you?
I think so much of it is of course, dependent on the space and the users of the space or the intent of it. But it comes in that confidence building. And you can get a pretty good feel for somebody, within the first few minutes of working with them, if they're going to be open to that. I love the ones where they are, but they're nervous to just go ahead and commit. And so it's just building that confidence. But, like Andrea said, it could be the gateway rooms, like the powder room. I love doing dining rooms. Most of us that have them, we never use them. So they're almost like artwork. You're walking past them and it becomes this, just visual aesthetic when you're in the adjacent spaces or hallways. We paint them in off-white and just walk through them, maybe do the end of it, make it a focal point. You can bring in these stronger colors that you might not want to look at all day long. But if it's a room you're passing through, it's a great way to try it out. But like Andrea said, okay, well, maybe we want a darker color here. And so I think it just goes back to that confidence level. And if it's going to work for them and their space, it's up to us to just help them get okay with that and feel comfortable and get excited about it. Once they're excited about it, they're going to love it.
It's true of so many things. I love that you brought up dining rooms because Sue has repainted her dining room no less than how many times now? Sue, are we on 4?
Oh, that's right. Where are you at now?
10.
10 times. Yes. So I think I'm going to go black.
Are you really?
I think so. We have like a beautiful wainscoting. So like it's not going to be full immersive black. But I cleaned up the whole palette. So I went to like a bone white this year. I was like done with where I was at. So the whole house is just white. And So I'm all about the high lows, like in contrasty, in crazy times, people will go real deep or real light often. And I'm there. So I'll let you know how that goes. I don't know.
That's awesome.
We'll see.
I'm here for that. I'm 100% here for that.
This is actually my dining room, and
I see.
I never use it. It's a catch-all.
Is it purple or is it black?
Oh, it's black, but it's like a shimmery. It has a metallic. I don't know if you can see it in the light.
It's black. It looks pretty.
But it's like Andrea said, it started out about 15 years ago. I painted my primary bathroom black and was obsessed with it, but I only got to see it when I was brushing my teeth in the morning or at night. So I was like, I want it where I can enjoy it. But our dining room is like most people's. Like, we very rarely use it, but I walk past it multiple times a day. And I'm like you, Sue. I change every few years. This has been up probably 10 years, and I'm still not tired of it. It's sticking around.
It becomes like a jewel box.
I love that.
It's a great way to put it.
Yeah, totally. I love that word.
But I don't think we're going back to color being craved. And so, to your question, I don't think we're going to find ourselves even needing to encourage it as much. It's more people are asking for it now. So this is going to be really fun for us and designers, because now we get to play with colors and values and those just very interesting hues.
I totally agree with you. I mean, we've been waiting a long time. We could only do farmhouse white for how many years, right?
I thought we agreed last year that we weren't going to talk about gray.
Right?
Didn't we say last year?
But I would probably say that all three of us from each brand could say that, our top performing color, top tint is white. Like,
Yep.
Isn't that crazy? It does feel a bit bipolar though. Like, I don't feel like those midtones are hanging like they used to. It's like either commit or move on. So we're seeing the white on the black. We're seeing these deep, rich tones with the whites and off-whites. But that idea of like an LRV of 50 mid-tone gray house, and you're kind of like, well, what were you doing out there? Could you not commit?
Yeah, you couldn't make a choice. Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it's highs and lows, right? It's like high contrast. That contrast ratio is important. People feel that polarization, and it shows up in color and in design of their home. So I think it's cool, right? It's reflective of where we're at right now.
Yes.
And like, chuck out the Scandinavian thing and let's go.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's talk about what we're chucking out. Last year, we chucked out farmhouse. I'm still seeing too much farmhouse out here. Not by designers, but
people like it.
Yeah, I think there's still a real DIY pull toward that, which is interesting to me. Back to warmth, like there's just a sense of place and rootedness in something. Think about farmhouses. They've been around for how many hundreds of years, right? So there's that. What else are we getting rid of this year from a color standpoint? And then I want to come back around to what you said, Sue, about color psychology. There's some very interesting parallels there. What are we putting on the train out of town this year from a color perspective that you're like, yep, put it on and don't look back?
I would say that there's a shift in the greens.
Yeah.
So for the first half of 2020s, we saw very blue undertone, evergreen, forest, the deepness, and now it's shifting to yellow undertone. So we're seeing palm leaf, like really verdant greens, really kind of taking center stage, which is interesting. And the thing about green color family, it's massive. So you go everywhere from mint to hunter, right? And there's just like so many shades in between. So there's room for all that space in green, which is great. So blue undertone, first half of 2020s. And then we're going to move into this yellow expression, which is, I love.
But it's back to the warming up. Like you said, we're going to those warmer undertones, those yellows, those reds, like those are starting to push through as we leave some of those blues behind. It was interesting in market. Like there was like one or two things in navy, but green, to your point, Sue, if it's just huge, every green you could possibly imagine, depending on the line. It was nuts. Andrea, what would you add?
I would definitely say the green shift. We were actually having a very similar conversation earlier in the week with more of these like mossy, olivey kind of colors that were really interesting. I think it's really more like the cooler neutrals. I feel like that's what I kind of keep coming back to in my mind. Not even just gray, like the blue grays, that was really big for a while. And I'm just like, just over that, they're pretty colors.
Sure.
And maybe if they were paired with something warmer, like if you had a mid-tone blue-gray, let's say, and you had it with a warm brown, like if you had that kind of balance happening, then you can get away with it. But when everything is cool white, cool blue-gray, then a gray, it's just again and again having cool colors all together. So like we mentioned earlier, when you're introducing some of those warmer colors, that's what helps keep it fresh and on trend, or gives the longevity of a color that maybe you painted a couple of years ago. And that's one of the questions that we get a lot because people are sometimes a little bit hesitant to use a color that's deemed a trend color because they think that it's not going to have the staying power. But, I know for us, one of the things that we put a lot of emphasis on is thinking about colors and how they're going to live on a wall. It's not a pillow, it's not a sweater, it's not something that's going to be as easy to change out. So we want to think about that longevity. And if we had somebody paint October Mist in 2022, then how does that evolve year after year and help people so that they can still feel like what they have in their homes is current, but moving along?
Makes complete sense. Yeah, I'm ready to put the super cools on their way out. People need a hug. I just feel like we've been through so much psychologically as a country, as an industry, through COVID, figuring out how to give our clients what they needed with all these parameters around it. Like, I just feel like people need to be hugged virtually and in reality. And I think that's where the warmth is coming back in. People are craving warmth in every capacity just to be accepted, loved. And even if your wall color can give you some intonation of that, we are looking for it, I feel like. I feel like we very much are. Ruth Ann?
No, you're absolutely right. And both of you said it with the warmth. So our 2024 color, because I keep forgetting we're still in 2024 because we've all moved into 2025 with our color of the year.
I know. I always have to stop and say, what year are we in? I can't ever remember.
Right. And we're working on 2026 as we speak. So I'm already, yes, but I have to keep reminding myself it's still 2024. And our color for 2024 is that pale yellow. And it was the warmth that everybody has mentioned that drove that. And I love that you said that, we needed a hug because I often tell people, with our chaotic lives that we have, when you come home, it should feel like a hug.
Well, and even thinking about the yellows and how...
Yeah. So, because it's, we're still here in 2024, but...
It's creating that sanctuary.
Yes, that sanctuary. And I think the warmth, especially the organic hues, which Sue referenced as well, but it's those warmer organic. So you think, the blue grassy green, it's more like the leaves, as they're turning and that yellow undertone, but it's also those authentic materials. Like I'm seeing natural wood come back faster than we have in a long time. It just checks all the boxes. And I think that's going to continue. If you want to jump into 2026, I think that's only going to get stronger. I don't think it's going to plateau or slow down anytime soon.
Makes complete sense. Andrea, what would you add to that from your perspective?
Yeah, I would say that the personalization angle is really important. So, thinking about how I think people are seeing more points of inspiration and they're becoming a little bit more brave in what they're bringing into their home, and they're more apt to have more layered spaces. What are the materials that they're bringing in? Maybe they're playing with different patterns. So I think the more that we see these different ideas, people feel like, okay, my home is, yes, it's my sanctuary and it's where I want to feel the most comfortable, but it's also this great opportunity to express their creativity. What's their personal style that they want to express when people come to their home? It's not so much, well, my friend down the street has Balboa Mist and this one has Collingwood, and I love those colors and that's great, but not necessarily feeling like they have to follow what other people are doing. It's really saying, you know what, I really want to have this amazing color-drenched room, and I'm going to go from floor to ceiling in one color and really make my own statement that's going to make me feel good in my space.
I think it goes back to the psychology and I think the politics of where we currently find ourselves in.
Right.
Not very many people are taking anything sitting down these days. And so, the views are bold. The opinions are loud. The families that aren't going to have Thanksgiving dinner necessarily together this year because of political divides are real. But it's interesting to see how, we can take a really, what can feel like ethereal or fun conversation about color, but there is the real deep psychology of this is a reflection of where we are as a society. And I think it's interesting. I'd love to hear, Sue, because I know all of you are monitoring trends, especially in Europe and what is happening. I feel like Europe informs us, but I also feel like the colors we're seeing are really more about American culture and where we're at. How do you juxtapose those two ideas? Or do we see that they're really running parallel, that it's more of a global event where there's this, I don't want to say discontinuity, but just kind of this loud and very bold opinion about all things?
Yeah. We had our forecast workshop this week, so I'm like hot on the heels of these conversations for 26 into 27. So I would say for the first time in a long time that the U.S. is going to lead the conversation on color, because in 2026, we're 250 years old. So it's going to be a lot of Americana out in the world, and that'll have a global adoption rate, which is interesting. So if you think of timeless, classic American colors, right, we're going to lean into that idea of heritage, so that timelessness is going to be really important. And that's going to ladder up to people loving antiques again and reclamation, and this idea that I don't have to go buy a full suite of furniture. I want to curate and collect and gather and make it my own. And I think that's kind of like where we're moving. There's a rebellion against the established tropes, right? We don't want to be told what to do. We have our own opinions. And that's going to translate to home as well, which is really exciting for designers, because it'll be an opportunity to talk to people about personalization again, instead of trying to like mimic this perfection of what's in a catalog or in a showroom. People will be encouraged to like take on that piece that's an heirloom or like a crazy piece of furniture from a family member and then make it your own. And that's really exciting. We haven't seen that in a really long time. And I think that's going to resonate for a few years and really grow momentum into this idea of something that feels new and fresh. When we were in Milan in April, the colors were there, and the translations, of course, were very Italianate. So it was very opulent and gilded, and you got that vibe. But the colors were what I would consider very New England classic: navies and deep greens and deep carnelians and reds and browns, at very anchored, like stable, timeless colors. So that's going to be fun to see interpretations, because everyone's point of view is going to be different, which is exciting.
I want to go back to that because I think it's very interesting. You dropped a total truth bomb and something that I don't think we see is coming. The idea that America's going to take the lead on color. No one has said that before, I don't feel like. I feel like we have been living on the heels of Europe when it comes to textures, colors, and whatnot for literally hundreds of years. This shift is insane. Is it the anniversary? Is that the shift? What triggered that? Because we don't normally get that spot at the table, and I'm super excited about it.
Well, people are paying attention to it, right? So what's going on in our politics is transcending global conversations. You know, that's pretty consistent. But I also just think it's a break, right? The Europeans, they're like taking note of U.S. cultural trends. So like where fashion is at and streetwear and what U.S. designers are doing. We're talking about cowboy chic again. I'm like, are you kidding? But it is definitely.
That's true.
Yeah, like Ralph Lauren. Think of Ralph Lauren, right? Like that is going to be real. But it'll have that with a twist. So maybe it'll be Ralph Lauren and Carhartt, or I don't know. 26 is going to be fun. As crazy as it might be, I think there's going to be some bright spots that it's about this idea of rebellion and like, I'm not doing status quo. I'm going to do me, and it's going to feel right. And I'm creating my own.
I absolutely love that. Andrea, Ruth Ann, speak into that space.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, so much of what you're saying is our influence for the 2025 forecast is this self-expression, creativity, not worrying about fitting in with societal norms. So I'm intrigued by what you say, Sue, because I can see the U.S. being a leader in that, but we all look so different here. There's not one look for America. So I like what you're saying, but it's going to be interesting because there is so much rebellion, you know, within our own cultures. And I think that's why the bold colors are being received so well. Remember, it used to be if you showed someone a color, they're like, oh, is that going to be too dark? It's going to make the space look smaller. I think they were really concerned about what is everybody else going to think? And now nobody thinks that anymore. It's like, this is my color and I'm putting it up there.
Exactly.
Unapologetically so.
Yes.
I keep circling back to that because I do think you're right. I can see the U.S. being a strong influencer, but what is that going to look like? Because we're not Americana, red, white, and blue anymore. So now you got me excited. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Andrea, what do you think?
I hear you for sure on the Ralph Lauren kind of aesthetic and even the cowboy thing, which I'm not so sure how I feel about that. And so it's really kind of like picking at some of these different areas that really haven't come to the forefront. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it all unfolds. The funny thing is, too, you even see some of these, you know, the 90s and all of these things from whenever. I'm like, oh, geez, that's back? Really?
Yeah.
People who are 20 and they have these prints on their wall. And I'm like, oh, interesting. You're drawn to that, you know? So really looking at so many different areas and then trying to kind of knit that story together to say, here's what's in the air. And here are some reasons why. That's why for us, I mean, it's like a puzzle every year. It's a lot of fun. I think the most fun part of the whole color trends process is really from like now to say the end of January, when we're pulling together all the influences and we're coming up with what is the palette, and that's just such an iterative process where it's like, one day we're kind of in this direction and the next day we're like, this is missing. And so it's fun. We really enjoy it. I'm sure it's probably similar for both of you.
Yeah, same. Very much so. Yeah.
It's interesting to think about ivy coming back. As you're saying that, I'm like, oh, tell me about the 90s. I've seen so much ivy on
the
walls.
Wallpaper border.
Yes. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love stenciling my bedroom.
We can't. No.
Yes, the grapes and the ivy, right? And what was better than sage and cranberry? Let's not forget that combination, right? Like,
right, Merlot.
It comes back, but in a better way, right? It's like we've learned from the past, and now it's a better iteration.
Oh my gosh, I love what you said about Merlot.
You mentioned avocado earlier, and it went away, and we made fun of it, but it's back. We're not using it with harvest golds and oranges. We're using like I said with the creams and the soft apricots, and look at dark brown. Like that's having a huge resurgence. And that was so linked to the 70s for the longest time. It came back after 9/11. Remember, it was chocolate and blue and chocolate and pink, and then it went away. Mm-hmm. I think dark brown is going to be one of the new blacks because it's warm, it's dark, it has that organic, it's protective. So they're all cyclical, but having them come back in different iterations with different palettes, they take on completely different looks, which is the mystery of color, but the fun of it as well.
Well said.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the browns. It's really giving black a run for its money, or it's even like a black that has that kind of brownie undertone, right? Yep. So when the light hits it the right way, you're like, okay.
That warm black. Yeah.
That's yummy.
Yes.
Almost like an espresso.
Yeah, I love that.
Right? I feel like it is. Like when we walked into Four Hands at High Point, literally front and center, the number one thing was that brown couch. And it's a deep espresso-y, beautiful, and it is, it's gorgeous. It is not your grandmother's brown. Although I will say grandma design, everyone's up to speed on this, is back.
Yeah.
Back to that Americana, back to what you were saying, Sue, about antiques.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yes. If you've not heard of it, go check it out on Pinterest. It is insane to see some of that coming back. And I almost think it goes back once again to the psychology of color and design, but people want to feel grounded. There was something very safe and wonderful about your grandmother's house. Well, most people aren't going to argue that, right? And I think just seeking to have that again, seeking to have that sense of, in a very turbulent politically environment, just that sense of place and security that feels like deep-seated home. If you would say grandma design's coming back and you're going to see these avocados and whatever. Well, what I told Ruth Ann when she said purple last year, I was like, purple, Ruth Ann. And here we are, awash in purple, sophisticated purples, but purples, and so it's just interesting to see people seeking that out because I would have never thought we'd be seeing that type of design come back to the forefront. And it is all the thing.
And like you said, it's, grandma's house is safe.
It's nostalgic.
It's nostalgia. Bingo. Yes.
I feel like nostalgia is a word, you kind of have to be careful where it's not like you're pigeonholing yourself in one period, but it's almost kind of like pulling from these things where, I remember this from this time and place and it really speaks to me and it is personal and makes me feel good for a given reason. And it's bringing in those different elements, it's not being like historically accurate.
That's a good way to put it.
It's the familiarity, which is why we also see in architectural design, bringing back gables and pediments. And it's those things that have withstood the test of time that we see and we associate with safety and longevity.
It's well said. I love that you brought in the architectural component, Ruth Ann, because it doesn't just start with color. We're seeing it across the board in structure and just the visuals we're seeing. I want each of you to speak to the designers out there that are like, okay, this is great. Now what? What is an actionable item that makes everything we've talked about doable? If you could boil it down and you could say, okay, here's the thing you just have to know about everything we've just talked about. I just want to go round the horn. What would you say to that? Sue, let's start with you.
I would just say seek color, take risk. It's time to shrug the fear and at least explore a color that you've never tried before. Try a red, try a terracotta, try a forest or a palm green and see how it changes the dynamic of a room and a design and explore that. That would be what my advice for 26 is.
Love it. Andrea?
I would say for a designer to really help their clients along to understand color and getting into that undertone story. That's just something that I love when the light bulb goes off when you're, comparing two colors with a client. And it's like, well, this is why this color looks the way that it does. And here's the undertone. And then it's like, bam, they've got it. So I always love for a teaching moment in the whole color process. So that's one of the things with our palette that we're really hoping to drive home.
Yep. Set you apart as a subject matter expert for sure. Ruth Ann?
I would say be bold, not just in the saturation or value of the color, but the uniqueness. And we've had this cookie cutter stamped modern farmhouse look for so long. Everybody's houses look the same. Find out what it is about that space for the client and have that confidence to do something unique and different. And I think, going back to what Sue said, that might be our 2026, where there isn't one commonality. It's the trend is everyone's doing what they like and not worrying about what, they should be doing or what people are going to think. But I would say that uniqueness and going for something different and expressive.
I love that.
Can I go philosophical for 1 second?
Do it, Sue.
People are shutting off social. They're tired. There's so much fatigue. And think about that. They're looking at their home. So it may be a little bit of a COVID creative expression in your home 2.0, right? As people are I'm done. I don't want to go fight with people. I just want to stay inside and work on a room. So I think we're going to have a little bit of a creative 2026 too, amidst the chaos, which is a good thing, right? That's how people will survive all this chaos.
Yeah. It's about creating your own space that speaks to you, that lets you feel grounded and sit in it. And I think that's our greatest challenge as designers. It's not seeking to necessarily give them the latest and greatest. It's seeking to understand what they psychologically and emotionally need, coming back to that hug, and then finding the colors that coordinate with that give them that sense of space. We call it space, but to them, it's their place.
Yeah.
We're placemaking for them. We're not space making. We're placemaking. And so giving that back to them, I think, is huge. What a great conversation. Thank you, ladies. This has been fabulous. We hope to have you all back again next year. One of my favorite conversations of the year.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing us together. This was wonderful.
Love to do this next year.
Yeah, this is fun.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to This Coaching Corner. And I love the conversation today. I know it can be scary to use color. It can be even scarier when your clients come to you and say they want to use a color and you're not feeling confident about it. Confidence applies not only to color, but to every part of design. And I'll never forget one of my first clients absolutely loved color. Now, mind you, I was living in Arizona where we are all about the earth tones. But this family had just moved from, I believe it was Charleston. It was very used to traditional and bright and vibrant colors. And they said, we want it to feel like home. And I remember flipping to that part of the fan deck and being utterly terrified that I was going to ruin their entire Arizonan home. What I wish I could tell myself then, if I could go back and talk to myself, it would be, take a deep breath. This isn't about you. This is about giving the client something that they love, that speaks to them. And like we talked about in the conversation, they need a hug. And for this family, that hug was the feel of home. And home for them was not yet Arizona. It was still back in Charleston, and they wanted to recreate it there. So don't be afraid to figure out what your clients want and give them what they need, because not only are you giving them a home, you are giving them the hug and the emotional space that they need. If you are not feeling confident about this, it is okay. I want you to book a personal strategy session with me. Let's get you there so you are the subject matter expert who can speak into this space and serve those clients with the heart and passion I know you have.
And that's the closing bell. I hope you've gathered valuable insight from our conversation today, equipping you to thrive in your interior design business. Don't forget to hit that follow button to never miss an episode. And if you have burning questions or specific topics you're curious about, explore our episode library, or better yet, book a strategy session directly with me at colorworks.coach. Until next time, see you in the studio. It's our virtual community, and the link is below.